さあ、食事をとりながらで構わない。
What if I told you that the author of a harem manga wrote this story? Oftentimes in the manga industry, you'll see mangaka working on their main titles for several years. And one of two things usually end up happening. They either don't finish their work because they're too busy fighting for their life, or they stay healthy enough to see it all the way through. Those that end up finishing usually go on to create another manga in a similar genre. Rumiko Takahashi started writing Ranma Half in 1987, a gender-bending martial arts rom-com that ended in 1996. Later that year, she started writing another series called Inuyasha, a fantasy adventure with some rom-com attached to it. Tatsuki Fujimoto began writing Fire Punch in 2016, a psychological action piece that could leave the strongest guy of the Salty's platoon bawling in the middle of the floor. In 2018, he closed the door on Fire Punch and opened another one for his latest work, Chainsaw Man. Another psychological action piece that would have anyone on their hands and knees after looking at this manga panel. You see the pattern here? But occasionally, you'll get a few mangakas that get so tired of their genre, they just want to write something that's completely different from what they just finished. It's weird and unorthodox, but that's how we got one of the best animes this season. Ranger Reject, or Go-Go Loser Ranger, is about this monster named Fighter D, who, as you might have guessed from his name, is a certified background character. He's part of a villainous army that's made of monsters just like him that are hell-bent on world domination. The problem is, that was 12 years ago when they actually stood a chance. You see, that was when they first came to Earth in a giant sky fortress with big boss executives that could actually push humanity's back against the wall. But then 5 strong individuals stepped up to form the Dragon Keepers and heroically fought to protect the world, repelling them from their initial invasion. But these villains are persistent. They come back every Sunday with a new monster to fight the Dragon Keepers in front of thousands of people. If that last part sounded too convenient to be true, that's because I told it from the everyday citizen's perspective, and they still believe Santa's real. Here's what actually happened. The villainous army's executives all got completely ass blasted and died in the first year, leaving only the little minions left with no leaders, which effectively ended the war. But instead of finishing them off, the Rangers forced them into a deal to come up with a different monster for the Rangers to defeat every Sunday, basically turning them into puppets for the entertainment of the people. They're like WWE wrestlers, except their payment isn't money. It's the fact they get to live another day. Week after week, month after month, year after year. These dudes are getting their asses whooped, and everyone has pretty much accepted the fact that they're going to be stuck holding this L for as long as they live. Everyone except for Fighter D. He's sick and tired of being treated like a tool, so he decides he's gonna go off script and show these Rangers he's not to be fucked with. Yeah, maybe fighting them head on is a no-go. So he decides on an infiltration plan instead, where he'll destroy the Dragon Keepers from the inside out. But he has to keep his head on a swivel because one wrong move could mean... God, this anime is so good.
I'll tell it to you guys straight. There's nothing normal about this show. For starters, this was written by Negi Haruba, the guy that also wrote a slightly popular harem manga called the Quintessential Quintuplets. Not sure if you guys have heard of it before, but that manga completely changed the perspective of what the harem genre could do. And so when I heard he was writing Ranger Reject, a show about the fucking Power Rangers, I thought it wouldn't even come close to what he did with the Quintuplets. But that's where I was quickly proven wrong. I didn't believe this man could cook so well, but the creativity in the story of Ranger Reject is so good, I can't stop watching it. From the very beginning, you can tell something's different even though it starts off like most Sentai anime, and that's because the first 8 minutes is the only part we've been familiarized with. The traditional good guys that we're used to seeing as heroes are now the bad guys. The bad guys that were always the villains are now the heroes we're rooting for. The story, the environment, and oh my god, the infinite amount of plot twists. It's all unnerving and makes you feel uncomfortable, but that's exactly what makes it so addicting. It strays away from the typical Sentai storyline we're all accustomed to. I really enjoy this unique perspective of having a villain as the main character because it's a side that doesn't really get explored as often as it should, even though it's a simple concept. Like, imagine if we had shows like Pokemon give us a look into what happens when Team Rocket fails to capture Pikachu for the 3000th time, and they finally have to report to the big boss Giovanni. That would be unthinkable, right?
2 weeks to leave the country with all your things, because if I catch either one of y'all in the streets, I'ma pull up with my Mewtwo and it's on site.
But that's exactly what Ranger Reject is all about. One guy who is written off as nothing more than a background character in the credits, trying to overtake the throne as the world goes against him. It feels rewarding to finally have an anime explore both sides of a story, but what really separates this anime from other Sentais is the twists and elements that keep being added to the plot. They not only tie in with the story, but directly impact the characters' choices and decisions based on what's given to them. Like the fact that the villains are incredibly weak but are immortal and have the power to regenerate, unless they get hit with one of these bad boys. Or how about the fact that Fighter D has the ability to transform into other people or objects? Being able to do these two things, he actually has a way to beat opponents much stronger than him as long as he relies on underhanded tricks to turn the fight. He even uses his regeneration mechanics to help as well. And this makes all the fights so unpredictable, yet they make so much sense when he comes out on top in the end. Even his unexpected allies realize how much outplay potential he has with those abilities.
ありがとう。優しいね。
I think I just developed a new fetish. I really enjoy the fact that the main character is the weakest in the show compared to everybody he's going against, because there's no bullshit power friendship to help bail him out of a bad fight. He has to employ some of the dirtiest techniques to win, and I wouldn't even be surprised if his signature move was throwing sand in someone's eyes or kicking them in the balls. I like that he has to fight dirty in order to barely scrape by to see another day. I like how gritty he has to get in order to do what needs to be done, because it reinforces the idea that Fighter D is fighting a very steep uphill battle. It's not supposed to be easy at all, but the surprising thing is that he isn't the only one willing to make big sacrifices to be one step closer to the goal, which leads me to my next point. The characters are so well written.
Everybody has a background that they came from, a purpose in the story, and it's their history that leads them to where they are in the anime and what motivates them to achieve their goals. And trust me, everybody in this anime has an angle they're working from. Fighter D wants to destroy the Dragon Keepers from the inside. Why? Well, he wants to rule the world since that's what the army was sent to do in the first place, and he's been oppressed by the Rangers for the last 13 years. This guy Hibiki wants to help Fighter D. Why? Because he always looked up to the Rangers as righteous heroes that fought for justice, especially after he and his sister got saved by one as children. But after he sees how corrupt they are and what they're really doing to the monsters, he wants to end the war between them. And Yumiko, well, we don't know shit about her or why she's helping Fighter D, but she's hot. These backstories keep us invested and give us an emotional connection with these characters. It also helps that they're also interesting by having different goals from each other. And because they have different goals, they have to be careful when interacting with others because they might expose their plans or give away hints, which could lead to some problems in the future. It's like the anime version of Mafia or Among Us, where people have to play different roles in order to stay in the game for as long as possible. And as things are moving in the background, you have no idea who's playing this game and if anyone can be trusted. This adds so much depth to the story and these multifaceted characters because it feels like there's this invisible ball of pressure building up over time. And after every close encounter, there's even more pressure. It makes all the intense moments feel that much more tense, and we're all just waiting to see what happens when the bottle explodes.
But what I really want to talk about are the character designs. In a lot of other Sentai anime or anime in general, they usually use outfits as part of a character's design to distinguish one another, and that usually works, unless you're colorblind or Stevie Wonder blind. But in Ranger Reject, there's a whole hierarchy of Rangers that are ready to replace the current ones, which means there's a lot of characters. So instead of giving everyone different outfits, they all dress similarly to others in their respective group and focus on other aspects to differentiate, the most obvious ones being personality and facial features. Why does this guy look more like a villain than the actual villains? I think it's pretty smart to have the audience pay more attention to the smaller nuances of the characters because it actually makes them memorable, and it gets you in the habit of looking for the little details that you might miss, which helps you better understand someone's intentions. Ranger Reject pays homage to the original idea of Sentai and puts their own twist to it to carve out a unique identity. They take a simple idea, refine the kinks, and execute it to a T, while adding some of the most insane elements that could change the entire course of the story. Most episodes left me with more questions than it answered, and usually, I don't like that. But this anime made me love every single minute of it. It's bold, it's brave, it's well paced, and most importantly, well written. This show was a pleasant surprise, and I think if you wanted to watch something not so cookie cutter this season, this anime has you covered.